All right.
Before we get to that.
We're ready when you guys are.
All right, let's do it.
Anytime.
It gets too hot in here.
Yeah.
It gets loud out here.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you can.
It gets hot.
Oh, we get loud for you guys, or you guys are making
It
noise?
gets loud for you.
We're
Oh.
okay with that. History. Why didn't you tell me I spelled history wrong, y'all? All right.
What? That looks like. Yeah, you're definitely missing a few letters there, dude.
All right, here we go. And we're just going to go live. It's informal.
All right.
Just,
That's how informal it is. We just go live to Facebook with misspellings in our banners, and we can correct them on the fly. You know,
That's good.
The internet is forgiving and unforgiving all at the same time. Welcome. Good morning. We are live here. I'm Chris McGinnis, joined by Don Hamilton, spokesperson for ODOT. And we are talking not all things, but traffic-related, ODOT-related issues for the big solar eclipse coming up on the 21st of next month.
It's going to be huge. We're calling this probably the biggest traffic event in Oregon history. I don't think they had anything like this when the Model Ts were around, but I think that it's going to be huge.
Yeah, a few more people moving to Oregon between then and now to make our state so wonderfully busy on the roads. So we're getting lots and lots of questions out there about what impacts drivers can expect in terms of, congestion, traffic-geddon, mass gridlock. What are, I guess, the biggest concerns that you've identified within ODOT that are your most pressing priorities?
Well, the most important thing is going to be traffic. I mean, the state is making a prediction of 1 million people coming into the path of totality during the eclipse. Now, that's a lot. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of traffic.
We've talked a lot about that number. Like, where did that number come from? And I guess maybe to clarify a little bit, it sounds like not necessarily 1 million people migrating to Oregon on top of what we already have, but folks coming from like Vancouver and the Portland area and driving into that red stripe of totality.
Right.
I wonder, can we bring up the map real quick? Is that possible? It's just for perspective, what Don's talking about, of course, is that path of totality that travels from the Oregon coast into central and southeastern Oregon during the morning of the eclipse. And that is the area where we're going to have this, presumably, 1 million people traveling to within that corridor across the state of Oregon to witness the eclipse on the 21st. So go on about the traffic.
Well, it's going to be very, very congested. I mean, think about what it's going to be like on I-5. People coming in from out of state, coming down from the Bay Area, from Puget Sound and coming up from California. Think about what it's going to be like on 101 on the coast, where there's really only one road and very often 2 lanes around in there. A lot of those roads, Highway 26, I-84, Highway 22, a lot of them we're expecting to be very, very crowded.
There, as we look at that map of totality, you can see like some of the coastal cities that are in the path, and I believe we're looking at, I'm not sure if we can zoom in just a little bit, but I know Lincoln City is certainly in there. Newport is certainly in there. It's just south of Tillamook. It's just north of Waldport. So you're talking about small roads and lots of people. And when we get closer to the event, from a weather perspective, we hope to obviously be able to nail down that forecast because we're all hoping for clear skies to be able to see it. But we know that like for instance, the Oregon coast could be cloudy, and if you have an influx of 50 or 100,000 people extra to the beach over what they would normally see over a normal weekend, and then suddenly they decide, oh, it's cloudy, we're going to hit the road. When you told me about that scenario, that suddenly, I've been in the skeptic category for like just how bad could this really be, but that got my attention.
Can you imagine that? Suddenly it's cloudy at the beach and 60, 80,000 people decide, well, let's drive over to the valley. What's that going to do to all the roads coming into the valley?
All within a 3 or 4 hour window, because we saw the weather forecast and said, oh, it's the morning of, and it's cloudy here in Newport, or it's cloudy in Waldport, and now we got to drive over our 2 or 3 pass roads to get, over to the valley.
There's very little margin of error in the traffic about absorbing this many people onto the system that we've got with this many new visitors coming into the state. We don't have a lot of ability to really sustain any real problems. If there's a wreck, if there's a crash, a truck overturned someplace, it's going to tie things up horribly for a while.
What is ODOT recommending for employers in, say, the major metro areas like Portland, like Salem, I know Vancouver's out of your jurisdiction, but I'm sure that WashDOT's probably having similar conversations with their folks in Vancouver, because Vancouver, even though we're not quite in the path of totality here, it's certainly going to be a memorable event here in the downtown Portland area.
Well, this is a conversation we've been having with a lot of employers recently, and we're really recommending that they discuss what's the best way to go about it. How are they going to get their employees to work that day? Do they expect it to be a problem on the roads? Is this a good day for people to work from home? Do they need to make sure their shelves are well stocked for all the visitors that are coming into town also? There's so many different things that different employers need to do to look at it. Maybe it's a good day to take a day off, but they've got to decide what works best for their employees and for their customers.
What do you recommend, maybe internally to your staff? I'm sure it's going to be all hands on deck for most of the ODOT staff. What are you guys doing specifically for maybe your, everyone's essential, but the non-essential to that day personnel? What are there any memorandums coming down from, above saying do this, don't do this?
We are being told, this is a day at work. And there's no doubt about it. There are many opportunities people have to work in the field, to work from home if you can. People are expected to use their best judgment in terms of understanding what's the best thing they can do to make this work as well as they can. I mean, there's no one rule that applies to everybody. So it'll be interesting to see, but it's a day at work for everybody.
Got some questions coming in. We got our question man over there. Jeff's raising his hand, so.
We do. I mean, there are going to be a lot of questions about specific traffic impacts. I don't know if you can talk about that necessarily.
We were talking about this a little bit before we went live, and I have seen a lot of questions on our Facebook feed about, well, what about I-5 between Tualatin and Wilsonville at 2 in the afternoon? I mean, no, come on, man. We can't answer that right now. That's just, it's just, that's not a question that can really be answered until a day of. I'll take that one off your plate.
Well, I think there is an answer for that, and the answer is that use your best judgment. If it's going to be very, very crowded out there, understand the timing, plan ahead, do a couple of days early. Where the busy roads are going to be. I-5 is going to be really busy. I-205 coming into Oregon is going to be really, really busy. We can't talk about specific routes because we really don't know. I suppose this is one of those situations where I hope I'm terribly wrong in everything that we're saying out there, but it's all pointing to a lot of congestion everywhere, and the trick is really just plan ahead. Keep tuned to tripcheck.com. You'll know the conditions of the road, understand what's going on the roads, and do the best you can, figure it out.
And the weather forecast, which plays part and parcel to that. If it's cloudy at the beach, we know that there probably will be an exodus to the valley, which means your major coastal pass highways, Highway 26, Highway 20, are going to be troublesome.
Yeah.
What are some of the internal conversations that you guys have had about problems that could come up and what you guys are going to be able to do about them, or what you're prepared to do about them?
We've got a couple of steps that we're taking right now. First of all, over-width loads are being prohibited in the state during that. That's truckloads that are wider than 8 feet. Some have to be have permits under normal situations, not during this weekend.
So they're not being permitted.
Not being permitted during this time.
Whole weekend. Okay. So what do you have a time frame on that for those that are involved in that?
It's going to be noon on Friday until midnight on Monday night.
So Tuesday a.m., 12 a.m.
Those are, especially on 2-lane roads, those over-width loads are going to make it difficult to get around them. It's going to squeeze all the roads. We're trying to do what we can to get as much congestion off the roads as possible.
Okay, so I'm bad with my my vehicle knowledge. That's not necessarily an RV, though, right? Or is that?
No,
an RV?
It wouldn't be an RV. Those are legal. You have to have a special permit to go beyond the legally allowed width.
Okay.
If you go wider than that, you need a permit. No permits are being allowed.
So we won't see any of those prefab houses going down I-5.
I don't think so. No windmills, nothing like that.
No, nothing like that. No turbines or anything like that. Okay.
But more than that too is we're trying to cancel construction work that's going on in the zone of totality.
There's a big construction project right now in the Woodburn area. Actually, I-5 paving.
Yes.
We do a lot of paving all summer long, of course. But I know that one specifically has just a normal traffic warning, so it's created some headaches. So all of those are on hold.
Those are on hold for that time period, and a couple of days before. I think it's going to be really difficult after the eclipse on on Monday and maybe even on Tuesday for traffic as well.
Yeah,
So
talk
we'll
about
see.
that. I know you can't necessarily speak for like Travel Oregon or the port or anything like that, but we know that there's going to be some influx. How much, we don't know. We'll see. But traffic getting to and from the airport and the timing, you had indicated to me that you thought it might be worse after rather than before.
Well, if you think about it, we got a couple of days for traffic to sort of flow in smoothly. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when people can move in slowly. But the day after that, what we're really worried about is that suddenly
The mass exodus.
that suddenly at noon on Monday, and we've got hundreds of thousands of vehicles all trying to hit the road at the same time. That could be a real nightmare in there. People have got to, arrive early, stay put, and then ideally leave late.
Questions?
So that actually is a question that we got. We've got someone asking, who is it? Ariel Marie Lessons is asking, is it better to wait a few hours after the eclipse to leave if there's no other choice, or to leave directly after the eclipse? And neither of those actually is that good of a solution, right? Wouldn't you rather they just stay as long as they can?
I think anything that you can do to try to delay your departure after, if you're right in the zone of totality, it's going to be very difficult to move out afterwards. And I think that in those first few hours, I think the roads are going to be really, really jammed up. I hope I'm wrong, but that's what it looks like.
What about people just on the road at the time of the eclipse? I mean, surely that's going to happen. I mean, surely there's people out there that are just going about their normal workday and saying, I got to get from point A to point B, and oh, maybe I do want to stop and check this out.
And that's
are you
a big concern that you announced before, right?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
don't
are you
want people to just
anticipating
stop.
seeing just thousands of cars pulled over on the side of the road, stopping and looking up in awe? I mean, and then what? And you probably can't speak for the police, but are they going to be out there ticketing those people because you can't necessarily stop on an interstate highway?
That's one of the questions that I've been getting more than anything else. Why don't we just pull over the side of the road for a couple of minutes and we can look at everything? Everything's going to be fine. But you don't want to be standing on the side of the road staring up at the sky with somebody driving down the road staring up at the sky. It's really dangerous to be pulled over at the side of the road with a bunch of other people like that. That could be a very, very dangerous scenario.
Which is why I think in most states that's actually not legal. The only reason to be pulled over to the side of the road is for an emergency, and staring at the eclipse would not probably fall in that category. But another question.
Yeah, we've got a lot of questions coming in, but Barbara Pence is asking, on what experience are they basing this on? I know you mentioned Model Ts right at the beginning, but she's asking, did we have this problem in 1979?
Not to this extent. Of course, the state is a lot bigger now than it was in 1979, and a lot more mobile than it was in 1979. We've got the total eclipse here, and we're the first place in the country where it's going to get hit. We're basing that. You were asking me about how do we get to that 1 million estimate. The Office of Emergency Management came up with this estimate. It's based on a lot of different factors. It's based on hotel reservations. It's based on the expectations of travel services. All of those different things kind of go into the mix, and then they use some kind of an algorithm. I always get a headache when I use that word, but some kind of a calculation to try to figure out exactly what it's going to be, and they came up with this as it's an estimate. I mean, we're not expecting a count of 1 million people.
Well, even if it's off by a 500,000, even if it's half off, I mean that's still a ton of people.
That's
all heading into a very small area with very limited access points on very small roads.
That's the point. It's going to be a lot of people, no matter how you count it, how many it's going to be. So, but I think that there are so many different factors from what it was like in 1979 that are all indicating that this is going to be a much busier event than it was then.
In case you're just kind of joining us here on our Facebook Live segment, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to stop in, we are talking with ODOT's Don Hamilton, a familiar face that we always go to when we've got trouble on the roads. And we are anticipating what could be a lot of trouble on the roads on August 21st, of course, the date of the total solar eclipse here in Oregon, late morning. We are soliciting your questions and feedback, and we've got the authority here to answer them as best we can. And I know the questions are continuing to come in, so let's go ahead and take more.
All right, this one sort of the same question being asked
Are
by...
you mic'd up, by the way, so that...
I am.
Okay, so people
Yeah,
can
in
hear
fact,
you. Okay.
I might be too loud right now. I'm trying to watch that. But Peggy Bailey and Michael Staling are both sort of asking about emergency vehicles in different ways. Michael wants to know how will it affect, or how will ODF be able to move around? And I think that to the same point, Peggy Bailey's asking, are there going to be roads that are closed that normally would be open to regular traffic that maybe will become arteries for emergency vehicles instead, just in case?
All roads are going to be open. We have no plans to close any roads out there at all during this. But it's a good question, and that's one of the things that worries us about all this congestion, about how do we get the emergency service vehicles through. That's one of the reasons why we're limiting the over-width loads, to make sure we can try to do what we can to get equipment through. But in addition to that is we're going to be closing a lot of the way stations, the scales, around the state, and use them for staging for emergency services equipment. So we can try to get equipment closer to where it might be needed around the state.
So you said kind of pre-stage it, or stage it prior to. Okay.
Exactly.
Well, one of the questions that came up in the newsroom too, I know Greg was kind of talking about this, back east when, there's a landfalling hurricane threat, they turn around and take the interstates and they say, okay, both directions are now one direction out of town. Are there any plans to make I-5 one direction out of the path of totality after the eclipse?
We have no plans for anything like that right
Okay.
now. We know that certain places do that, for example, on a big football game or something like that. But we have no plans for that. I mean, we still have people going about their lives. We still have people trying to get their business done. It's not going to be all eclipse all the time. At least, no, we hope not. But we still have a lot of people that need the highways, need the freeways to do their work.
So at this point, no planning on making one direction out of. And those are extreme circumstances too. I mean, you're talking about you literally are evacuating a million people from a coastal island, and so that's why they do that. And we're not to that point.
Right.
Life,
yeah, we're not
life
like
and
that.
business
Life
has
and
to
death
continue.
Right.
Yeah. So okay. Good, but certainly a viable question, a valid question.
But let me add in there too, is we're going to be watching the roads really carefully that day, for the days before. A lot of our emergency operations centers are going to be up and keeping very, very close track of the roads. So we're going to try to get equipment like our emergency response vehicles to get them as quickly as we can if there's a problem on the roads, try to keep the roads as clear as we can. And a lot of that is to get the emergency service vehicles in and out.
More questions?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that we're not going to be able to give really specific traffic instructions about what to expect, but Jim Grigoriev is asking, which region do they expect the most gridlock? Madras, Willamette Valley, the coast? Can you speak to that?
Yes, I think is the answer to all of those. I mean, those are the areas in the path of totality.
Let's bring up the map because
in there too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where people are going to be heading in. I think the coast is going to be difficult because you really just have Highway 101 as the way to get in and out of there, and up and north and south through that region. But I think that the valley is going to be difficult. There's a lot more people in the valley. There's a lot of events in the valley, and the area around Bend and Central Oregon is going to be very, very difficult.
And probably Central Oregon, just because of the fact that that's in the grand scheme of like what we know in weather, is that is probably the most sure bet outside of wildfires creating smoke and whatnot. That's probably the most sure bet to have good, clear weather in August. Not to say that we wouldn't here in the valley, but actually we could bring up the Wells Fargo sky camera because this morning, ta-da! Do we have it? It's cloudy out there. It's cloudy here in Portland, but we go to the coast. Of course, there's always the coin flip. It could be cloudy at the beach, but look at that. That's our Cannon Beach sky camera, and it's actually looking like a pretty nice morning at the beach. So these are all the things that on the meteorological side of things that we're continuing to evaluate. Like, well, what's the weather going to be like that day? And it could very well be cloudy here in Portland and clear at the coast. You're looking at it right there, how it could be on eclipse morning. So back to the map and Central Oregon, where a good chunk of our population lives. You mentioned before that there were a lot of events planned.
Yeah, there are. We've been trying to take an inventory of the number of events that are going to be around the state, and we've got up more than 150 different events around the state. The biggest one is the Symbiosis event, which is They're expecting 30,000 people plus.
Do you recall where that is?
That's in the Ochoco National Forest.
Okay.
So a lot of these, Oregon's a big state, and a lot of these places are going to be on, fairgrounds and campgrounds and wineries and all over the place, parks and that sort of thing.
Campgrounds that hold 100 people. So.
Good fields. But a lot of these places are going to be sites for eclipse events, and they're going to have sometimes thousands and thousands of people.
You said that one's 30,000 people, right?
Yes.
That's a lot.
The Symbiosis is expecting at least 30,000 people to come to
That's about the 8th largest town in Oregon, right? I mean, something like we're going to just suddenly have a pop-up 8th largest city in Oregon.
Yeah, with a delightful 2-lane road moving in and out of it for afterwards as well.
And one porta potty.
It could be very difficult. We actually were debating that about can ODOT find porta potties? There weren't any more available because they've all been leased and rented for so long right now at all of these events all over the place.
Yeah, that brings up a good question. Have you ever had to put porta potties on the side of the freeway?
Well, we do for construction projects. Okay. When we have workers out there, part of what they always have that right nearby. So.
You know what's kind of interesting too? I thought I'd bring this up. Hood to Coast is 5 days later. There's still going to be a lot of people in, and a lot. I just wonder about. That'll be interesting.
You mean like hopefully eclipse victims scattered all over the road?
Eclipse victims, I don't know. I'm just thinking. I mean, you've got major. That's always a big traffic tie-up, of course, that weekend going through town and out through the Coast Range as well. So, but in any event, I digress.
No, I think that the number of people that are going to be kind of scattered throughout the hills and the mountains and the campgrounds and the fairgrounds all over the state is going to be really large, and they're all going to be coming out afterwards.
So, once again, the afterwards sounds like that's the biggest time frame that you're most concerned about. The highest volume and the biggest traffic impact might be in the hours following the eclipse up until that afternoon, that evening.
That's my sense about it, is that we may get people arriving a couple of days early in the days before, but then after it's all over, people are going to yawn and get up and take off their eclipse glasses and head for home after that.
Questions?
But that could be busy.
Well, for anybody who joined us late, I think that, Chris, you and I talked about this question before. What's the typical freeway volume like, and how could you compare that to what's happening here? And also, will it be just this commute from Corvallis to Washington?
Are we looking at the I-5 North commute from Portland to Vancouver on a Friday afternoon, and will it be that thick from Corvallis to Portland? I mean, is that one of your anticipations?
Well, think about what it's like on I-5 on a Saturday afternoon when there's football games in Corvallis and Eugene, and then spread that out all over the state. I mean, it could be that busy. It could be that many people on the road looking for a place to view the eclipse. Normally, right now, summer is our busiest time on the road anyway. So when we normally see the roads, which are, as everybody around Portland knows, the roads have been very congested in the last couple of years. August is the most congested time. We're going to add this into there. Okay, so we'll see what happens. Expect it to be slow and delayed. We hope people don't get stuck in their cars. Nobody wants to watch the eclipse stuck in their car on the road someplace.
Well, and that brings up a good point too about making sure your car's up to spec and making sure you don't run out of gas or something if you get stuck in a traffic jam. I mean, things that you might consider if you were stuck in a snowstorm on the road, and which some people unfortunately have experienced.
Yeah, we know
in
about
the last
that at
6
ODOT
months,
too,
7
yeah.
months. So. Gas up, I guess, right?
Well,
before you head out,
all of those things is make sure your car's in good working shape. Have food, have water, take your bathroom breaks when you can. You don't want to be stuck on the road. And that's the possibility, is this could be real gridlock in a lot of places.
I mean, never mind and not minimizing the emergency aspect of things, but there's also a great window for just a whole lot of discomfort out there for the folks on the roads as well. More questions.
Well, related to that, we've got Anna Deal asking.
No bathroom questions.
Nope. She says, I've heard about bringing extra gas. Is that a recommendation just for Eastern Oregon or also the Salem area? And I was wondering if you could sort of unpack what will people need to bring, and is it a statewide thing where you would recommend that they fill up their car with the essentials?
They need to make sure that they've got as much equipment ready to go as possible. Food, as we were saying, food, water, make sure your car is filled up. And I think make sure you have your medications with you. All of that sort of thing. If you get stuck on the road, if it's like one of these bad ice storms without the ice, it could, and without the salt, it could be. It could be. You could get stuck for a long time. That's one of the things we're really worried about is the discomfort factor. That's huge. Is that people could be stuck and angry and short tempers on the road. That's not a good situation. Nobody wants to be in there.
We've got another one from, forgive me if I'm saying your name wrong, Jim Grigoriev. He's wondering if ODOT has sort of a plan for if we find out it's going to be extremely cloudy and the eclipse isn't going to pan out. Will we let people know so they don't go crazy and head for Central Oregon?
Well, as we talked about, the coastal passes only are 2-lane roads for the most part, or in good chunks. So what are we going to do for traffic control on Highway 20 and 26 and?
Well, there's only so much we're going to be able to do. If things get really bad all of a sudden, if it's suddenly cloudy on the coast and suddenly cloudy in the valley, we're going to work with police to try to organize traffic as well as we can. But at that point, people are staged and ready to go, and they'll behave in the way that they're going to behave on the roads. We're going to be working, though, with police to try to get as good a plan as we can if things suddenly all go screwy on us. I don't think that's a technical engineering term, but we can use that.
All right, so things are going to get screwy, Jim, is what we just heard.
Yes.
For anybody who's just joining us, I know you've talked about how it's business as usual. Barb Thornburg asked a long time ago, what is ODOT suggesting just for employers, businesses, employees that are just trying to go about their business in the metro area that day?
Businesses are going to have to try to make the best judgment that they can about how difficult is it going to be for them. Can they get all their employees into work? Where are they coming from? Can they work from home that day? All of that sort of thing. These are decisions that businesses are going to have to make on their own. They're going to have to look at, do they have enough supplies to serve their customers on that day? Will they be able to get their deliveries out if it's a delivery service of some kind? I mean, everything is going to be, we fear that everything will be so locked up. A lot of those things are going to be hard to do. Businesses are going to have to think really seriously about what the consequences are going to be. Whether they're going to invite people to be in. I'm sure everybody at KGW is going to be.
Everybody's going to be here.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So it's really a choice that businesses are going to have to do. You can't make an overall projection about what's going to happen, except to be prepared for it to be bad.
And to that point, I know we've heard that number, 1 million people tossed around a lot, and we've talked on and off camera about that. That's kind of an estimate of the number of people migrating into the path of totality across the state. So, I mean, that includes a lot of people in the Portland area that are, hitting the road, heading to Corvallis.
Maybe going down.
People in Northern California heading up to Central Oregon.
Down to Salem. There's all kinds. Yeah, people from the Portland area may be heading there.
And I even heard you mention on the Portland Today episode just about a week and a half ago that you were following up on some information that there was a large contingency of Seattle folk that were going to be heading down the morning of, across the interstate bridge. So are people that live in Vancouver that are just trying to get to work going to be able to get to work?
Twitter told you
people that live
right?
in Vancouver that come to Portland and have to deal with the normal gridlock.
I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday who lives in Olympia. And he was like, well, all I got to do is just kind of leave maybe at 2 or 3 in the morning and head down into Oregon at that point. I think maybe that, you're getting into the middle of the morning rush hour commute from Vancouver coming in. And that just sounds like it's going to be, the potential for running into gridlock is really bad if you're trying to do that. No, we're hearing a lot of stories about people from Puget Sound coming down, maybe taking I-205, maybe taking I-85 into Portland. But that is all the things that we're worried about. That's part of what our concerns are like right now.
I would not want to be stuck in that
No,
drive.
the other big thing, and we've talked only a little bit about that, but was the potential for wildfire. Now, late August is always a dangerous time for wildfire. You add into that a couple 100,000 extra people, campfires, all of that sort of thing. Hot cars on dry grass. Sparks.
Exhaust.
People cause most wildfires.
Yeah.
Smoking materials, all that sort of thing. People need to be really extra careful out there. If we start having to close roads, it's going to make things that much worse. If we start having to evacuate people, if the fire officials start having to evacuate people, oh boy, they'd hate us for that.
And we're coming into prime fire season, and as one of the other weather stories is the dry streak that we've been enduring here, 40 days. Now today would make 41, so we're coming up on quite a long time where a lot of grass out there is ready to burn. So
yeah,
good point.
It's all that's one of the things we're most worried about are sort of traffic and fire, and those are the real dangers out there. And people need to be extra careful out on the roads about. It's going to be a wonderful experience for most people, but they don't want starting a fire to be part of their experience.
No, of course not. What are you going to be doing on Eclipse morning?
I'm probably going to be stuck in a dungeon someplace, helping to monitor things.
At ODOT Traffic Command Center.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to be trying to help with the roads and answer questions.
Which, if you've never seen some of the behind-the-scenes footage of it, I mean, it kind of looks like a little, mini air traffic control center with screens and monitors, and they've got their dispatchers set up all around their different kiosks, and they're listening to scanners and communicating with their incident response team. It's quite a system that you've got down there.
Yep, you've seen that before. We're going to have our emergency operations center up and running that day. Matter of fact, they're going to have emergency operations centers all over the state.
Well, now,
be up and running.
That question came up in the newsroom too. Is that like in a different area than the typical ODOT command center? Are there mobile command centers set up kind of like local police departments might involved in special situations?
We have our we have our traffic management operations center, which is dispatchers, cameras, connected with police, connected with emergency services. In addition to that, in a small conference room, we have an emergency operations center, which we can use when there's a special event, when there's an ice storm, when there is a bad traffic event, when we have a major closure because of construction. We will open up the emergency operations center so we can try to make quick decisions on traffic. That's what's going to be up on the day of the eclipse and probably the days before, and we're going to have those operating all over the state.
And one of the other questions that came up in the newsroom, and which we did answer, was what about taking two-way traffic on roads and making them one way in, one way out? And as you said, ODOT right now does not have any plans to do that. Situation could dictate otherwise, though.
We'll see. I mean, we've got a lot of tools at our command, and if circumstances call for it, we'll certainly consider something like that. But we're trying to keep the roads open as much as we can, keep people moving to the best we can, and that means in both directions, really. But we're going to be watching very closely on the road. The best thing to do is to go to 511 for traffic checks. Go to tripcheck.com. That's the way you can find out day of. We're trying to do the best we can to get traffic counts day of, so that people really know how busy the traffic really is out there. So if you go to tripcheck.com, we're going to be trying to post that information there.
Have you had communication with other DOT facilities or agencies outside of the state, Idaho, Kentucky, Georgia? I mean, they're all kind of bracing themselves for similar, they're in the path of totality. And so they're going to see folks racing into those areas, but we're the first. We're the pioneers, so everybody's going to watch us, but they're going to have a plan in place long before the day of. Have they been in contact with you, or vice versa? Have you guys shared stories, advice?
Yes. I mean, there is actually a national group of all the states that are in the path of totality that's been meeting to talk about transportation messaging, what we've been doing. We had a message on this about a couple of weeks ago in one of the states, I think it was South Carolina. I was like, so what's the date of that again? Because they just weren't up to speed on it yet.
Well,
but they're all,
they've got about 2 hours to prepare for it once it hits here, right? So is it something like that, 2 hours, an hour and a half? I don't forget how fast it's going to go. It's going to go pretty quick, so they better get their act together.
But we've also been in close touch with Washington. Well, they're not going to be total the way we are, but we're still connecting with them because they're going to have some traffic impact. Same thing with California. And we've been in touch with them. We're trying to make sure that the messages that we're getting out there are going into California as well. So the Caltrans is doing what they can to get the messages out there.
Question? Oh, I thought I saw you raising your hand. Out of the corner of my eye,
I was having a drink of my coffee, actually.
Do share.
Yeah, I will.
Let's go to the beach. Can we cycle up one of those beach cameras? This is
sure. Which one do you want?
Again, any one of them, just to show.
Let's go to Cannon Beach because it's always sort of the prettiest. No offense, Pacific City.
Well, it's also one of our best cameras, right? This is a really nice one
Yes,
from
that's what I
Haystack
meant.
Rock, and the beach is, you know, sort of cloudy, sort of not, as is typical for this time of a morning on the Oregon coast in
here
late
we
July
are.
and early August. But you know, this could happen,
Yep.
and that would be just a disaster. If it were cloudy the morning of the eclipse here in Portland, we might really see mass exodus over the mountain to the east, or to the west, probably to the east.
I'm
in
sure it's
Central
keeping
Oregon.
people up in Bend worrying about exactly that as
Yeah.
they think about what could happen. It could be exactly like that. Yeah.
We've been taking a lot of questions in the weather department about, well, what is, you know, what do you know about the weather and making a forecast that far out? Well, we can't. All we can do is based on what's normal for that time of the year, which is got a pretty good chance that it'll be sunny here in Portland. A reasonable chance it'll be sunny to partly cloudy at the coast, and reasonable chance it'll be fully sunny in eastern Oregon.
It's summer in Oregon, we might see it. I know that every state is planning for the same sort of thing. Every state is up and running right now and operating and fully engaged in trying to plan for the kinds of trips that they're going to have out there. And
But we're going to be first, and so we're going to be the guinea pigs, and I'm sure they will all be watching to see what happens here, see what lessons you learn, and how, you know, if there's things that you quickly wish that you could communicate to help somebody else, because it's one thing that, oh darn, we didn't think of that, but that can help them.
We're going to be getting our messages out in those days, in the days before and the days after. It's basically 5 or 6 days. We're going to be really up to speed on everything in there, but we're going to be putting out tweets, we're going to be putting out Facebook messages, we'll be putting out all kinds of different alerts to make sure people are aware of what's going on out there. It's, as you said, Chris, it's going to be all hands on deck. Everybody's going to be worrying about this.
More questions coming in?
Well, I was just going to say that there are a lot of questions coming in. We're probably not going to be able to answer them all, and you guys have already been going for 36 minutes or so.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I know, it goes
Just
fast.
sitting there looking at that cute dog on Portland Today. They just popped up. We've got our
wish I
Portland
could
Today
pull it
show.
up.
They're doing. Oh, look at that.
They
Anyway,
get dogs. We don't get dogs.
No, I'll bring one next time.
You're just stuck
but-
with me.
So I was just wondering, if you could, we could probably just go over maybe the handful of tips that you really want people to know as we close out. And keep in mind, there are some people who haven't heard any of the answers to any of our questions because they're still joining us.
Rapid
but
fire. Oh, and
just-
one other point too. I may have completely missed this part of what you said. I was distracted for a second, but also when you're submitting your questions, if you're watching this later, which is a good chance a lot of people will be catching this
Good
later,
call.
go ahead
I
and
hadn't said that. Good
throw
call.
your questions in the comments section, because we'll go back through those. Later today or tomorrow. If there's one that I can't answer, I'll fire it off to you, and,
Okay.
and we'll
That's fine.
pass that along as well. But
So what would you say are the sort of handful of things, just a quick, brief synopsis of what people should keep in mind?
I've got 6 words.
6 words.
6 words. Arrive early, stay put, leave late. Those are the tricks that will help you plan ahead for this, help you make sure that you avoid the worst of the congestion if it gets really, really bad out there. Those are the things we're most worried about, is just the cars, just gridlock on the roads out there. And if you plan early, if you try to be clever and be strategic about getting a good plan going here, maybe it'll be okay. And let me add again, I hope I'm wrong. You know, I hope that everything goes smoothly on this, but this has all the potential for a real problem.
All right, how about those 6 words one more time?
Arrive
we're
early.
gonna hashtag this.
Arrive early, stay put, leave late. Those are the 6 words we're using to try to remind people about how best to handle this.
Hemingway would be proud.
That's right.
Thank you very much, Don Hamilton from ODOT, joining us. It's always
Good to be with
a
you.
pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Don's just a wealth of information for what goes on in the transportation system on the state side. I'm Chris McGinnis here with KGW. Thanks for joining us. Again, fire away with your questions, and we'll cycle back through those as we go through the day today and tonight, and we'll answer as many as we can. We're signing off for now.